We mentioned this by Pesach. We were talking about Passover and the Seder. That the Seder is called Seder because it's an order. It reminds us that there's an order to all these series of events. And so too, Rebbetzin Heller says that this word, sphira, connecting to the root of the word sipur for story, it shows us that, it just reminds us again that it's not random. It's not a random anthology. This is like something that's real, that's thought out, so to speak.
Right, and I think one of the messages she was trying to say is that our lives are not anthologies. They're not collections of random events, that it often feels like that. And I've been reading, a lot of books during this time, and they go through that, how life can feel like a blur. If you ask yourself, how many times do we go through our day, you can't even identify like what you accomplished that day. You're not even sure like what happened that day. Yeah. It was all a blur, or a week, right, or a year. It all kind of blurs together. And
she has a great quote. She says, "Our lives fly by so quick that we frequently lose awareness of the awesome power of our own story." When you think about it, like, it's so powerful that each of our lives, we each have our own story. And I actually just met a neighbor who was telling me their story, and it was just fascinating. And that's one of the things I love about talking to people and getting to know them, is everyone has such a awesome, unique story. And when we just go through the motions and go to our to-do list and focus on just being productive, then we forget about the story and the bigger picture and what's going on and the path that we're taking. We're just kind of dialed in into one thing, and then we forget about it. But just to stop and appreciate it. And this time of counting, really, it's not the only place in Judaism where we count for an awareness of time. And the other quote I just wanted to share, she has brilliant lines, Rebbetzin Heller. She says, "The metamorphosis of today into tomorrow is subtle enough for us to lose consciousness of beginnings and ends. The commandment to count teaches us mindfulness." And I think that's really what it is, that every day that's Judaism. That's so much of the mitzvos and the things are really teaching us to be conscious of what we're doing every moment and all the time. And this is just another example of that.
And just, to elaborate, for me, that really hit home, that idea that the metamorphosis, again, just the transition from, one day to the next day. It's like so subtle, you could like totally lose it. Yeah. And sometimes I feel like this happens to me after like inspirational moments in life. Like sometimes after like a trip to Israel, for example, it's like you're having this incredible experience, and then like the next day, it's like a whole different reality, and everything that just happened is kind of just slipped by. It's just kind of lost, because life just works like that,
So, it just keeps going.
Right. So when we have to make every day count, and you count every day, you really kind of try to alter that and dial in and be more mindful and intentional about your time and what you're doing and things like this.
Yeah, so that's the connection to number and story. Now I can talk with my hands. Number and story, because our days and what we do as we go through life, it's not just a number. It's part of our story, and just to see how it's intertwined together.
Right. And I think the Rebbetzins line was even more, for me, it hit home even more today, perhaps more than ever. While we are in this, baby looks like maybe she's sleeping in Mama's lap. But for those who, sometimes some of you might, if you're watching on Facebook, you might be wondering, like, why do we randomly switch topics? Sometimes people are asking questions on the Zoom, so you're welcome to join us there also. But I was just saying that this idea of how blurry days can get, right? It's really remarkable that today, more than ever, when we're in this stay-at-home mode, this quarantine mode, today more than ever, we can lose track. We can maybe forget to get dressed. We can just get in these funks. You don't have that normal routine, so time kind of even blurs together more than ever. Yeah. And this is something that even now more than ever, I think we need to dial into, this idea of counting and reflecting on every day and building and mindfulness, etc. That this really is the time to kind of dial into that and to be real with what our time, ourselves, and where we're holding.
Yeah, this just reminds me. Remember when Sabo was in town? I think it was when he was in town. And this also relates to something we're going to get back to later. But he always talks about how the years just flew by, right? And then you made an observation.
Saba's like 89, I think. She lived and be well many, many years till 120.
Do you remember your observation? How you're like, wow, if Saba feels that way, do you want to say it?
Yeah, I said this, I love saying this. If my grandfather feels this way, he was born in, if any of you math mavens out there, he's almost 90. He was born a long time ago, in the 1930s-ish, give or take. Yeah. So if Saba feels this way with, limited devices growing up, and he feels like his life went, so quickly. She's asleep.
I'll put her down.
Yeah, sounds good.
Okay.
Yeah, you're welcome. Yeah, but so Saba feels this way. That life just moves so quickly. How much more for all of us? And I discovered reading. I think I've mentioned a lot. This book. It's called Make Time. Jake Knapp and John Zaretsky. I'm like blissing out reading it. It's, I think, the best book I've ever read in my life. Besides the Torah and things like this, but it is just everything that I've been needing and wanting. It has in this book about how to focus on what matters every day and make time, and all of this stuff that we're talking about. And these are guys who used to work for Google and YouTube. Maybe they still do. I'm not exactly sure. They wrote a New York Times bestseller called Sprint, and they kind of identify as kind of tech nerds, guys developing ways to capture our attention. And they have this really, really interesting statistic that apparently, they didn't quote the source, but this is a well-researched book. The average American spends about 4.3 hours a day watching television. And then they said conservative estimates of 4 hours a day on a smartphone. And they said it's realistically probably closer to 5. Then they had this line that I got so pumped up, I went and I chest bumped the wall because I thought it was such a great line. And I was like, I have that experience a lot reading this book. They said that if you combine the 4 hours the average person spends on their smartphone with the 4+ hours an average person spends watching TV, then distraction is a full-time job, right? When one thinks classically the full-time job is 8 hours, that's over 8 hours. That is a separate job, is to have distractions and away from the reality. And again, it's not to say obviously it's important and there's so many good things about it. And they go through that in the book, how great the technology can be and how to, use it in our favor. So I don't mean to hate on technology at all, but to just consider and to give thought as we're thinking about time and how we spend our time, and how life can be without these, the constant barrage. One of the things I say, and I want to actually do a full session maybe on this next time, so I don't want to get too much into it, but I really advocate to totally cut out notifications. And I did that the last 2 days, and I'm just it feels like Shabbos, Yeah. I got the smartwatch, so I'm used to just
Seriously.
And if someone will be talking to me and I'll be like, but thank God, it's been wonderful. I want to share more ideas next week. So I don't want to get too much into that. Yeah. But yeah, so that ties in, of course, to what Sarah quoted from the Rebbitzin about just the blurriness of time, how it's so easy to just lose track, to lose conscious of beginnings and ends. And I would say even more so again in our highly technological worlds that we live in, with all its goodness and pitfalls as well.
Yeah. Another book we've been reading. For those of you who saw on Danny's Facebook, he posted a picture of his reading list, his quarantine reading list. So we're really reading them, and I get to read some of them too.
There it is. Okay.
Atomic Habits. So this is also a New York Times bestseller. And I haven't got up to the Make Time book, although I'm really appreciating everything Danny tells me about it. But just even in the very beginning of this book, Atomic Habits, he's talking about this idea of 1% changes. And the most powerful example I've read so far is about the England cycling team.
Yeah.
that they were the worst team, or one of the worst in the Olympics. Like, it was just
like in history,
ridiculous.
Almost, yeah.
They couldn't perform in the Olympics. They were not doing well until they had someone new take over in charge of the team. And he just implemented tiny little changes, like 1% changes to different areas of their cycling. Like, the clothing that they wear should be aerodynamic and comfortable for the season. And do you remember some of the other examples?
I can't remember.
You've gone through so much since then, like so much reading, but just like tiny, tiny little things. And then their performance is like astounding. They won so much that next Olympics. They won so many prizes.
I think in recent years they've been the most successful like cycling team in the world. You know, one of them. So
it's crazy. So the difference that 1% makes,
right.
And that's really relates back to Sphera and this time of counting, that like every day, one little step.
Right. And in the book, which is called Atomic Habits, why? Because what is an atom? I'm not a science guy, but I understand an atom is like a tiny, tiny little piece, a tiny little something. But you get more and more of those together, and it can make like an atom bomb, right? It can be very powerful. So
everything's made of atoms, like.
Right.
So those little pieces are so integral to the whole. And it's so easy to just think, oh, it's not a big deal, I'll just do X, Y, and Z. But really, you could also use that for the flip side and for the good, and just be like, oh, it's just so small, I'll just do a little more. I'll just do this. I'll exercise for 1 more minute. I'll make 1 less trip to the fridge, or, you know, whatever it is that we want to improve upon. Just those tiny little changes can make a big difference.
Right. And it reminds me also of, I'm not much of a hiker necessarily, but I led a birthright last summer, and I remember when I recommend no one ever do this. Never climb up the snake path of Masada. It's just, I can't, in good faith, I can't. Usually you could come from the back way, or you could take the tram up, but I didn't. I was not leading the pack. I was behind the pack, and it was absolutely brutal.
Although now you're so fit, you would be leading the pack.
Right. But essentially, I could choose to look up like thousands and it was a crazy number of feet up, and I'd be like freaking out. Or what I did is I was like huffing and puffing, like one step, one step, one step. And I did that for like 45 minutes to an hour. And eventually I was like up, passed out on top. And this little graphic, I have a picture if anyone's interested to see this. I laid down like on the floor on top of Masada, like in a shirt. And then I stood up. And then after I got up, it was like wet. It was like as if like I was by the pool and I laid out on the concrete, and then like it was wet. You know, so whatever, too graphic, I'm sorry, too much TMI. I got a little carried away, but those one step after one step after one step makes a massive difference. And the reality is also, I don't know if we mentioned this, like that's the thing about growth, is that it's good to know like where you're headed. You have to know, but like if that's your focal point, that's all you can look at, then you're going to get lost. You're going to get off course. It's going to be too overwhelming.
Yeah, I mean, I was just doing this. We were talking about implementing some of these ideas. And I was like, okay, I want to be an organized person, right? I want to have like in the home and the kids' school day. And I don't know, I was just thinking of all these goals, and I was just overwhelmed. And you told me this exact thing, and it's been so helpful.
Right, for sure. And that's the exact thing, again, getting back to counting Sphera up to 49. Like, you know, it's one day after the next day, and we're building on what we already did. Mm-hmm. We're adding 1 each time, plus 1, 1 more percent. It's very easy. I imagine, some can relate in quarantine. It's, it's really remarkable. Like, I don't know if anyone has the Apple Watch, which I believe is, by the way, the best device ever, because it's really impossible to waste time on it. And it's like just so efficient and can help your life. But one thing that it tells me is like I have a calorie burning goal, so it's however many hundreds of calories I try to burn a day. And like regular life, I get there every single day without trying. And I have to like up it because it's like too easy just by walking to my car and back a few times. but now there's no car to go to. There's no,
there's a car.
There's nowhere to go. So it's like from, the office in the basement to upstairs to the bathroom, to the kitchen. I'm getting like half of what I ever got before.
To the backyard.
Right.
And the front
So I'm
door.
like, okay, I gotta get fit somehow. I guess I should and need to start walking again. But one thing I did is, I'm gonna get huge like I used to be when I lived in Albany, and the guys would take me to Albany Strength, downtown Albany. It was great, and I'm like, I gotta just get brolic. I gotta get big again. So I started doing push-ups about a week ago, and I started doing this, and it was like brutal. I could hardly do 10, and now I just added on one every single night. And I do like 3 sets of them, and I add 1 each time, so I'm adding 3 a day. And I'm like, it's you can tell. I'm like,
Awesome.
like no one would ever mess with me right now because you can see the fitness that I've attained,
Yeah.
and just the total physical. Okay.
But if he would just focus on the goal and how fit he wants to be, it could be so frustrating.
Yeah.
So once you have the goal, you have to create the system and just day to day focus on the system in one step. And the goal is good to keep in the back of your mind to remember the importance of the system, but to continually focus on it is overwhelming. Actually, one of my favorite pages so far in this Atomic Habits is there's this chart on page 19, and it just gives examples of compounding, of like negative compounding things that we do and positive compounding things that we do. And I just love this idea about negative thoughts and how they compound. I think this relates because like goal and being overwhelmed, that we have to think positively about ourselves. Also, sometimes we forget this. And when we think of ourselves in negative ways, and he uses the example, if you think of yourself as worthless, stupid, or ugly, he says the more you condition yourself to interpret life that way, you get trapped in the thought loop, and you really start to think that. Meaning, like, it's so common that someone like messes up and they're like, oh, I'm so stupid. Or, God forbid, someone should look in the mirror and say, I'm ugly. Like, no one should ever feel that way. There's so much beauty inside and out. But if someone does, then it just, like, it becomes a reality. And it's like, I don't know, I just find it terrifying that we can make such an impact on our thoughts negatively. We have to be so careful the way we talk to others, but also the way we talk to ourselves.
Right. This is actually exactly the point Alana Callan made a couple of weeks ago when she spoke to us, was that point. The first thought sometimes that comes in your head, you have to understand that you're not responsible for that. Just get it out.
Right.
And don't let it mess you up, because it'll mess you up for the whole day, whole week, whole month.
Or life. Like,
life.
I'm always late. Okay, you think that's no big deal, but then you're just I have a hard time showing up on time because I just define myself as being always late. Like, that's terrible.
Exactly.
Those are all things we can work on. So simply, and just compound the other direction and label ourselves right positively.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So we're trying to be sensitive to your time and to time in general to shorten up my dear folks. I don't see them, at least on the Zoom. I don't know if they're tuned in on Facebook, but they generally told us you just got to greatly shorten it. So we respect that, and we're going to. So I just wanted to transition to the kind of the last towards the end of what we want to talk about. And I think that right now, when we are in this historic, and I think this is all connected, as hopefully you'll see, but I think as we're in this truly historic time in our lives and in history, in which, again, we don't have to elaborate too much how crazy things are and how unimaginable life right now is. If we would have asked us 2 months ago. 2 months ago, it was middle of February. I was in Israel, right?
Wow.
If you would ask us, if you'd tell us what was going to happen, we'd tell you, like, stop, it's ridiculous. So I've viewed this, and I think, as we think about all these things, it is really an opportunity to think of it's almost like a reset button, on our lives, that we can reevaluate our lives and the direction we're going in, and just the things that we love, the things that we don't love, and how to adapt after life, and maybe we'll have a session soon on how to adapt, to post-corona life. How does that look? How does that work?
Soon we'll get there.
So please God, hopefully.
Maybe.
But again, something that I think these guys tackle in this Make Time book is, again, they're like computer guys, but they basically say that in technology lingo, I'm reading that from the book, they say there's a default. And that means the way something works when you first start using it. It's the pre-selected option. And if you don't do something to change it, the default is what you get. For example, if you buy a new phone, by default, you get email and web browsers on the home screen. By default, you get a notification for every message. The phone has a default wallpaper and a default ringtone, etc. So you basically, they go through this book about how, no one ever made us, we never necessarily agreed to those defaults. And we don't have to go with those defaults. We can reset the defaults. And I think that now in our life, we're kind of like forced to kind of reset the default. And as our lives so drastically change, the default is busy, 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 running, barely any time to think or contemplate. We just take everything, you go to the store and spend who knows how much money, more than you're spending now. There's all these like defaults, and perhaps it behooves us to consider what our defaults have been and to what extent, we are revising them or considering, what our lives look like now and how can we reset or alter those defaults when we get out of this to improve our lives, for the good.
It's interesting just to think about how that connects to our habits and how like our habits are our defaults.
Right.
Yeah.
100%. Mm-hmm. And in a similar note, another guy, the book I read last year, Cal Newport has a book, Digital Minimalism. So he has a whole thing basically that you should go, he suggests people go 30 days on what he calls a digital declutter. And when you erase all of your apps from your smartphone, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, TikTok, when you erase all those things, then you go 30 days and you see like, what did you miss? Email, Safari, and then after 30 days, you can reintegrate the things that you actually missed and that truly give you value.
Yeah.
So I feel like now in quarantine, with this reset, we're kind of like on a life declutter. He calls it the digital declutter. I'll call it a life declutter. I'm thinking just ourselves, and our habits, like I'd be in the store, we'd probably be in the store between us or ordering like, I don't know, 5 times a week, spending, and obviously the people in the store, like they know how to like get to me, the Trader Joe's, they put those like Reese's cup things, right up front. So obviously I'm going to buy, even though it wasn't on my list. And, I'm just totally spending probably hundreds of dollars more because of those visits financially. And it goes on and on, the fast food we eat, and we got to keep them in business, please God. But again, we're spending an excess of money and eating, things that maybe in all areas of life, we're just doing things mindlessly perhaps. And now, as we consider life without all these things, again, we need to hope and pray and support everyone that they can stay in business, in a way that's healthy. But my point is that now is an opportunity to experience this life declutter and to evaluate what truly am I missing? Because we're missing a ton. I don't mean to say this is like the utopian way to live or the ideal way to live. We are missing a lot. But to really think mindfully, what am I missing? And then what maybe don't I need? Maybe after using, again, in the digital declutter model, I actually deactivated Twitter for a week. I think I'm going to deactivate it again. I got it back last night. But I think I'm going to get rid of it. Like, I don't need that, I really don't need it. It doesn't enhance my life. Now, other things maybe I do, and in life to figure out what that looks like. So that's just what I wanted to mention on that point. I think just the last thing that we wanted to go through a little bit is just get a little bit personal, to kind of share how we've applied all of this in our own lives. Hey, Ma, how are you? How we've applied this in our own lives in here in quarantine over these last couple of weeks. Ways that we've worked this in. And if you just want to say hello to Bubby. Okay, good night, love. Okay.
Okay, so I'll come talk to you soon.
So again, just wanted to get a little bit more personal and perhaps plant some ideas. This is what works for us, but we really encourage everyone who is tuned in to consider for yourselves what's one area, again, that in your own life, you can just do something just 1% different, 1% better to continue on your trajectory for growth.
Yeah, and obviously everyone's is going to be so different. This is just what works for us and what works for us right now. And the things that we've implemented so far, there's so many other things that, you know, we've been talking about and working towards, but we can only do 1% at a time. That's all that's realistic.
Right.
But that 1% is already making a huge difference. So that's really exciting.
Exactly. And so essentially we've noticed, because we've essentially had this reset on our defaults, or a reset on our lives, that in different areas, we've just noticed areas of growth for us. And one is simply just in our family dynamics, you know, our interactions with each other, with the children. You know, it's always growing up and being in parenting classes a lot and learning all this stuff. Like, it's a high value to have like dinner with your kids.
Yeah.
It's like a big deal. And we know that, right? But so many times in life, you know, we're running this program in the evening and the kid has that, you know, service he's taken care of, or that sport, you know, at that hour, and this and that. And there's probably only a select few nights of the week we'd actually all be get to the table together. And even then, it was a very short window of time when that would happen, with the exception of Shabbos, which is such a blessing, and that was consistent. But even every night of the week, we should really be having dinner together. Yeah. And now, because of this, we're not only having dinner every single night together, and we're going to make a point when we get out of this to literally just schedule it in and work around, move boulders, you know, to work around it so that we can get that. And now we're having lunch together too, you know, all of us. Nice. So that's one area, just as our family dynamic. Yeah. Another, and you're a big fan of, right, and share is you know, everyone has their strong points, I would say, and organization. You know, thank God there's a lot of stuff, a lot of kids, a lot of people here, and things are not always like super neat as we would hope. So something we started is every night we just turn on 15 minutes worth of awesome Jewish music, and we just go like beast mode, like cleaning. Everyone. Laser mode. Laser mode, as he says in Make Time, but I call it beast mode. Yeah. So does Marshawn Lynch. But I'm just here so I don't get fined. I don't know if anyone knows that reference. Greatest interview in history, Marshawn Lynch, great running back for the Seattle Seahawks. Didn't like talking to the press, so people would ask him, Marshawn, what's your strategy for the Super Bowl? He's like, I'm just here so I don't get fined. So I love that guy. He should have carried the rock. Yeah. They should have given him the ball in the Super Bowl against the Patriots. Instead, they made the worst play call in history of sports, and they threw, giving Tom Brady another championship.
Okay. Anyways, so we do 15 minutes of cleaning a night as a family after dinner, and we all do it. We put on music, we do it together. We used to just do it after the kids went to bed. We would try to do it every night, but now we all do it. And when we all do that 1% together, it's amazing. Even if one kid picks up 10 things, which could very well happen, but when you put it all together, it makes a huge difference in the house. And like, we're getting farther, like now consistently, like the table's clear, the counter's clear, things that would have been like a struggle on a regular night because of all the stuff. And the kids are even home all day and 3 meals a day. They're like, it should be so hard, but because we're building up, it's getting overall better just from that 1% increase and it's become a routine and a habit for us, which is, it's so cool. Like, it's just something we do. And it helps that they get a little chocolate, you know, at the end. That gotta do what you gotta do. But yeah, so it's that's worked awesome, and that's a great point you made. Is that like they're here all day? It's not like they're not home making a mess all day. They are, and it's still cleaner than it is, you know, when they're in school. Like, you know, at the end of the night. Whoa, it's mind blowing to me. Yeah. The other thing, the last thing we wanted to mention that we're doing personally is Sunday, really Sunday afternoon, is game day, family game day. So we started doing this. It was during the quarantine we started doing it, right? Yeah. And we pick a game or a game or two, and we just play it together. Usually it's during SD's nap time. And it's just great. But one thing that's so cool about it is the other day, one of the kids said, oh, could we play such and such game for family game day? Or, you know, they're just making other references to it, that they're excited for it. And they're looking forward because they know Sunday we're going to play a family game together. And it's just been making a really big difference also. And like the bonding, and it's just like, it's been great. Yeah, amazing. Yeah. Personal growth as well. That was kind of the reset on our family, but this reset, you know, personally, I guess that's really what we've been talking about this whole time tonight, is just
for myself, again, I just felt like sometimes a chicken with my, with my, my head cut off. And just like, there's so much going on, just busy mode, and a lot of great things and such a beautiful, fulfilling life that I've been blessed with. No complaints whatsoever. But I always kind of thought to myself, it'd be nice at some point to be able to learn different skills, like managing my calendar, managing my time management, and because of this reset for myself, again, big, so far the first like 6 weeks of quarantine was big in the wrong way, but now it's going to be big in the right way. But anyway, the idea again is just taking this opportunity to research and to learn and to read up and to really try to make these big changes and to utilize this as the opportunity that it is, unique in our lifetimes, where again we're kind of like put in a cave, for 2 months. It's okay, grow. There's nothing else to do but grow.
Yeah.
So to really take that opportunity. And one thing that specifically has been awesome, I just started this week because I just got through this new book I'm reading, but to essentially identify like a highlight that you hope to accomplish tomorrow. Just pick one thing in any area of your life, anything that could be satisfying, something you've been putting off but you've always wanted to get to, something that could be urgent. But that's like your focal point. And you spend 60 to 90 minutes on that, and you just go like beast mode on that. Just try that out. And like, I realized I've done this the last 2 days, and in the last 2 days, I've been able to come up from the dungeon downstairs, and I told my wife everything I did today. If you'd ask me on an average day, everything I did, so much running around and disorganization that I can't even tell you what I've been doing. But now, last 2 days, I have a clear picture in my head of exactly what's happened because of that. So again, whatever that is, I told you what it is for me, but to identify an area in personal development and growth that you want to capitalize on due to this crazy, again, unique circumstance in our lives.
Yeah. And that's something also that's the next 1%. We just introduced to the kids tonight at dinner, and we taught them about that. And, we started picking highlights for our day for tomorrow. And so if they want to go rollerblading down the sidewalk on Alameda tomorrow, if that's their highlight, then like, maybe you need to get your schoolwork done so we can have time for that. Like focus your day around that. And maybe that's how we can make it happen. And for our own lives, it sounds so simple when you're talking about someone else's life or, for what the kids have going on. But for our own lives, like just to think more, like how is that applicable? What do I want to get to? And do it. Yeah.
Exactly. And it's great to see all the old friends coming up on Facebook. Good to see everyone. But we are winding down. I just wanted to look at just, again, this will be actually super brief, but the third point, just a reset on our life is to evaluate kind of where you are financially. It is a scary time we're in. Thousands and thousands of people are unemployed. And at least for myself, this has been a wake-up call to think about building up like savings, to really like focus and dial in to building up like an emergency savings account, which maybe a lot of people don't know about, don't think about, but I've been really kind of thinking about that. And I've been actually looking at a budget. I use a website, youneedabudget.com, YNAB, and it actually shows you like what you spent last month. And I've literally been taking money I spent on like my cleaning lady last month, that I've been spending on gas last month, on groceries last month that I'm not spending anymore. I'm just putting that all in savings because life throws you crazy curveballs, as millions of Americans and people across the planet have observed. Yeah. So
although we are spending more now on our internet, I just upgraded. Shout out to CenturyLink, just for a tiny bit more a month. I got an amazing deal from 40. They said it's brand new. There was like all these errors she was trying to put in the computer, but she finally got it to go through to 940. So if you live near us, check it out also.
But and thanks to my man Max, who I think is tuned in. It's helping us with a little refi on the house. You got crazy good. We got crazy good rates, and going to save hundreds more dollars. So financial stuff is a big thing, and we're gonna have Max actually come on a Zoom some point and just give a little tutorial, try to get some other ideas as well for how to just think about this stuff. You don't have to be in debt. You can really be you can be rocking and rolling in the world of finance. And now's the time to start thinking about it. And now more than ever, perhaps.
And then two things. One more thing for tonight, and then the fifth way we're gonna save for next week. Health. Resetting our health and what we're doing for eating and exercising, and if not now, when, right? Like, we got to take care of ourselves.
Exactly, and it's so hard, and it took until after Pesach. It's hard to like get in that zone, but you realize like I'm not moving much, and not that everyone, I'm sure most of you watching are moving a ton, and I'm just kind of stuck in the house more than most. But now really is the time to
If anyone wants help with that, let me know. We have a sale going on. But
so
and then the last thing is thinking
about resetting our digital habits. Now obviously that's a great way of connection, and thank God that this happened to us now instead of like 20 years ago. So that's awesome. But at the same time, to consider how we use our digital habits and the effect it has on our well-being. And I want to dive deeper into that next week. I'm proud to say on my phone today, so far I'm under 2 hours of screen time on my phone.
Wow.
And I just feel like I feel like euphoric about it.
Yeah.
So
just to review, we're resetting our lives: family dynamics, personally, financially, health, and digitally. How are you guys resetting your lives? I'd love to hear from you guys. Be in touch. Tell us.
We won't keep you here, but feel free to reach out to us what y'all are doing. And again, just we spoke about Sphira. We're counting up. Now is a good time. You can go do it after the call. You can count the night. Now's an opportunity to grow, to build. We're building ourselves up. We're not counting down. We're developing these small little habits one by one, and a little reset on our life, and refocusing on how we're using our time, and to cherish the precious time that we all have.
Becoming bigger, to become our best selves. So that's really that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Well, thank you guys so
Great
much,
to
everyone.
see all of you.
Good
Thanks for tuning in.
We're very grateful for all of you. And last thing, while you're here, come tomorrow night at 9 p.m. Denver time, 11 Eastern, to hear Alana Callan part 2 on well-being.
Amazing.
And can't wait. Sarah's she'll have to tell me what happens. I'm excited, but enjoy. All right, all the best.
Good night.
Wait, quick question.
Yes.
Did you guys redo your living room?
Oh.
We've been thinking about it since the start.
So funny. I feel like we're always rearranging furniture. So when we cleaned for Pesach, it was a perfect opportunity.
The cats used to be there.
Yeah, it looks so good. We were trying to figure out where you guys were sitting. We're like, did they move rooms, or are they in the basement? But we recognized the window.
Yeah. We moved the couches.
It looks good. I like it.
Yeah. Thank you. Thanks. I recognize your couch too.
Yeah, same old couch.
I was thinking about the counting down and how we always count down, but we never count up. So it's more of a unique thought.
Yeah, 100%.
It's interesting. Maybe it's just the secular way versus the Jewish way. I'd love to learn more about that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
For sure.
Thank you guys so much. It's so great to see you.
Yes,
Thanks,
you too.
guys.
You too. Thank you. And
Yes,
have
On Zoom.
yeah, we miss everyone. Excited to get you back at the Shabbos table soon, and time in there and
Shabbos table, s'mores, all of that.
everything.
All of it.
Oh, good to see you, Maya.
Yeah.
Yay. Hello.
Good to see you.
This is awkward. I don't want to say bye.
Want the Jewish goodbye?
Yeah, I'll let Danny be in charge of that.
I mean, feel free. You guys can stick around. Chill. Obviously, we don't get to hang out and socialize like you did before a class. So,
How are you
yeah,
guys
so-
resetting? Anyone want to comment?
Want this karaoke count?